Welcome to January 21st, 2026. This is a very important day. This is my birthday. I really just can't think of a better thing to be doing on my birthday than hanging out with all the state and federal programs people from across the state. So it's pretty great. Get to look out the window and see all the snow out there. We got looks like about like a foot of snow last night over here in glorious Whitehall, Michigan. So I hope everybody's doing really well today. If anybody has anything that they would like to discuss or add to the agenda or anything like that, you're welcome to add anything in chat. If you have additional resources that aren't listed here, of which I'm sure there are many, 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 please drop those in chat and I can get them added under the appropriate agenda items. And I know that at all the meetings, I always share that I feel kind of more like a facilitator on these, where I try to kind of curate a lot of things to talk about, but really the knowledge is in the meeting, and that has never been more true than right now. I put several items on there that I know are important things for us, but I don't have a lot of information on those. And so I'm really hoping that folks have some additional information about some of these items or even resources that they can share. So I'm going to kind of bring up a few specific items with that. I've kind of been in a little bit of a limbo for the last 6 months. For those of you that don't know, I retired on June 30th. And so I'm back in a contracted role. And so, um, yeah, all kinds of excitement, right? So I'm back in a contracted role. And so I'm back full time now. So I feel like I'm going to get back in the loop, but I feel a little out of the loop by not working full time for the last 6 months. So, for a couple of different reasons, I curated a lot of information today. I do have a lot of information to share, but I'm also hopeful that we'll have some really good participation from everybody else and that there will be some good conversation and resource sharing. In addition to dropping things in the chat, if you know something or have something to share or want to give an example or anything like that, please just unmute and interrupt and go ahead and share whatever it is that you have about the current topic. So, all right, with that long disclaimer, we'll go ahead and get started. um, I did drop the agenda in. Melissa, could you do me a favor and every few minutes just copy that message about the agenda and drop that in there in case we have anybody new join? Thanks, appreciate
Yep,
that.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you. And just one more reminder to sign in. Then I just used that to send out reminders about future meetings. So the sign in's right here up at the top. If your name's not already on the list, just add it to the bottom. Okay, so starting out, the resource section is just here as a standing agenda item. These are a few important resources that I think are important to have and that everybody can reference throughout the whole year. I'm not going to go through all of those. We went through those in detail last time. If you were not at our last meeting and wanted a more of a review on those, I do have the video linked here from our last meeting. So you can watch that section if you want to. So I'm not going to go over any of those, but just wanted to remind everybody that they are there and there's a full discussion about those in our last meeting. Okay, so getting down to our agenda. The first item that I have in here is this is like totally insider information. So this presentation to MSBO that Kevin Walters is going to give next week. You guys get to see the meeting before he even has it with MSBO. So I'm going to pop this open, and if you've seen Kevin present before, he gives a lot of information in his meetings. And so sometimes the slides are a little scant on information because he gives a lot of detail when he's actually doing the presenting. And so he did send me his notes on the slides. And so I'm going to try to have that open and so I can kind of go over those notes a little bit. Um, and we're going to go through and look at a couple of these slides. So just kind of getting that ready on my other screen here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this open. So he has some updates on the U.S. Department of Education interagency agreements. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we have funding for 25, 26, and 26, 27 are in here. And then he has a few items that he wanted to talk about with the Michigan State Aid. So we'll just go ahead and look at a few of these things. So here on slide 3, um, this is talking about some agencies that are getting transferred around. And the most pertinent to our situation is elementary and secondary education programs going to Department of Labor. So it's really actually interesting. On the next page, there's this fact sheet. It's really not that long, and I really, really recommend everybody open this up and read it on your own. I think that it does a really nice job of like explaining what's going on. I think there's a lot of not necessarily misinformation, but just confusion about the changes and things like that. And the Department of Education's not closing. Why are these things switching there? And so that fact sheet, I think, is a good read. But what he said here was notes about slide 3. US Ed interagency agreements issue is mostly for MDE, although there could be some associated delays as they begin implementing the transition on the federal side. I'm letting districts know about the interagency agreements in our world with a radar screen fringe issue that some delays and clunkiness could occur during the initial transition, like when we say Department of Labor and OCTE Perkins funding last year. So what Kevin is saying is this is not a thing that is necessarily going to be like a daily concern or issue at the district level. It's really going to be something more that MDE has to work through. But that idea about clunkiness is something that we're going to probably feel. And I'm sure that clunkiness is not any surprise. I think we've all been feeling that here for the last few years. So anyway, that was just, he really wanted to have this interagency transfer stuff to be kind of just you know about it. I really, like I said, this fact sheet I think is a really important one. I recommend taking a look at it. It's not very long. Okay, so now when he talks about FY 2025 funding, he's talking about the year that we're in right now, 25, 26. And so these were the notes that he sent. He said, I would stress that all of the FY 25, which is academic year 25, 26, or our current school year, funds are protected, including carryover and tidings. So that means really any of the funds that we received this year are protected through September 30th of 2027. That doesn't mean that we're going to get the same amount of funds next year. We're talking about carryover and tidings. And so the funds that were released this year that we just got our final amendments on, 25, 26, they're all protected. Nobody's going to come and ask for them back. And then any of the carryover that's coming, any of the carryover that's generated from these, all that kind of stuff is good through 2027. So that's 2020, this FY 25. What about FY 26? So this is where things are not as solidified. So the note that he said about FY 26, which means next school year, academic year 26, 27, he said, I would stress that the FY 26, academic year 26, 27 funding is not finalized, nor has Federal Appropriations Committee reports including funding amounts or decisions at this time. We anticipate movement before the January 30 deadline to fund the government. So that's that. They moved that fiscal cliff back last month, I think it was. But it's coming up here this month now. We anticipate moving before the January 30 deadline to fund the government. I also included a listing release of the proposed K-12 simplified funding program block grants on slide 7 for reference, mostly going to impact ISDs from what I can gather. So you can see while this year's funding is protected, nothing has been finalized yet, so we really don't know anything about next year's budget yet. So these are, this budget summary is another important one to take a look at. We've probably heard about this concept of block grants. And so I recommend, we're not going to look at it together, but I recommend taking a look at this 2026 budget summary. Um, but like he said, it's probably his indication is he thinks it's mostly going to impact ISDs. And so we'll just have to see what kind of happens with this block funding. So a lot of interesting stuff in here. Let's see here. Yeah, we kind of talked about this. So slide 9, he says, I would stress that the Michigan State grant timeline is based on the delayed passage of student aid for fiscal year 26. So the delay that we saw this year because of the state government and the federal government is going to have impact on our funding for next year also. Competitive grants are moving the slowest based on system application development processes and testing before release to the public. So, there's different kinds of grants. We have the foundation grant, but we also have designated grants. We have competitive grants. And so competitive grants, we have formula grants. That's the ones that, most of the grants we see are formula grants. The competitive grants take the longest for MDE to turn around. So that's why a lot of those competitive grants that we might have seen in the budget are still slow to come out because they have to develop the funding criteria and the application process. They have to make the application. They have to make sure it aligns with legislation, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that's why a lot of the state grants, even for the state grant budget for this year, is delayed. The last item that he had on this list was about the MDE grants repository. And so just a reminder to visit that often. So we talked about the grants repository at our last meeting. So anyway, that was, like I said, super hot off the presses. I think the presentation is good and has some good information in it, but the links out to, I would like say, primary sources in there are really important. Those two primary sources links that I discussed in there. So I really recommend taking a look at those two links. I think they'll give you additional information. That's, I guess, if you're interested in trying to follow and keep up on what's going on with the block grants and the different kind of funding things, interagency sharing and all that kind of stuff. If you follow that all closely, I think those are a couple of really interesting things to pay attention to. It still remains to be seen how much all of that movement at the federal level impacts us at a local level. Like Kevin said, it seems like there's going to be a big impact on MDE and maybe how they interact with and use and get funds and distribute funds. Might not be as much with the locals. So I would say any questions on that, but I don't have any other additional information. So I would see if anybody has any other resources or any other knowledge that I haven't just shared. If anybody's really following the block grant situation closely or the interagency changes really closely. If you have any additional information, you're welcome to drop those in the chat or unmute and let us know more about that. But I think a lot of the stuff is pretty hot off the presses. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. If anybody has additional information, feel free to drop it in the chat. Other item under just general knowledge here, I really wanted to plug the MAS-FPS Spraying Professional Learning Institute. This may be one of our more important ones. We have some really great keynotes from the federal and the state level. So at the federal level, as usual, we have the Brewman Group is going to be there. So sometimes we have Tiffany, sometimes we have Bonnie. So this year it's Bonnie. So Bonnie will be there from the Brewman Group, and she's going to be talking all about the federal implications of all the federal changes. So we'll be able to have a lot of detail about some of the items that we were talking about today. We also have Kevin is going to be there, so he's going to be there for state updates. So he's going to have a whole session just on updates at the state level, and those are always really, really great. So in addition to that, we have Dot Blackwell, the MyKIP lead is going to be there to talk about continuous improvement, state federal programs, and monitoring. And then we are going to be kind of continuing our Future of Learning keynote that started at our Fall Professional Learning Institute. We have Jessica Anderson and Dr. David Richards are going to be there, and they're going to talk about learner-centered leadership. So there's a really, really good lineup. And this is the only PD that we really get for people that are in our positions. It's really great. We're also going to have a lot of really great breakouts. We're working on the breakout presenter list now, but we'll have a lot of folks from MDE and then a lot of folks from districts and ISDs presenting on topical issues. So um, highly recommend. Right now there is a block room rate. So it's at the Crown Plaza in Lansing. There's a block room rate. I'm working on making sure that at least one of the meals is taco bar. So Dave never misses out on taco bar. So the full agenda is listed here. The registration information is there. The block room rate code is here. So, oh, Stacy, don't even remind me about those churros. Those things are delicious. Maybe even better than the chips at the Crown Plaza. So, um, so several of us from the Professional Learning Institute Planning Committee are on the call today, and I wanted to see if I'm just going to ask this now. You don't need to put it in now, but if you're thinking about it, if you could just uh, drop this into chat. We wanted to, everybody that's running these meetings across the state are going to just ask this question about breakout topics or presenters. If there's a specific topic that you think would be really, really great to have for a breakout, or if you have a great topic that you wanted to share, or if you know somebody that you saw a breakout recently or something like that, and you're like, wow, more people need to see that. If you could just drop that into chat, either what that is or who the contact person is and that sort of thing, I'd really appreciate it. We have a really great list of breakouts, but our committee thought that it would be nice to ask everybody out in the field, what do they actually want instead of, what do we think that you want, or just what the last survey participants indicated. So if there's something you're like, I really need a breakout on X, Y, or Z, or I have some great information about X, Y, or Z. If you could drop that into chat today, I'd really appreciate it. Just kind of give it a little header of like breakout idea or breakout info. I'd really appreciate that. It could even be on things that we're talking about today, right? So you're like, okay, I kind of get what we're talking about today. I'd like some more information. Just drop that in the chat, and then our committee can work on maybe getting a couple of those um, brought into reality. So, and if I see anything in chat, I'll make sure that I pop it into the agenda here. Melissa, Stacy, anybody else that's on the call that is kind of in the know about the Professional Learning Institute? Anything else that anybody would like to add about that?
I think it's always a great time. I like it in the spring because it is at the time when I'm getting ready to think about my consolidated application, and it's a great time to meet colleagues and ask questions. Just kind of get some more people to talk to if you have questions for anything. So I will be there.
I agree with Melissa. It's very timely, and I feel like the landscape is quickly and ever changing right now. So it's a good time to get those updates at the federal and state level. And I like what Megan put in the chat. I feel like in the Fall Institute, we're told about all these 31A things that were coming, and that was it. So they're probably still navigating through those, but if there's any updates on those this spring, that would be great.
Thanks, Melissa and Stacy and Megan, and anybody else with an interest in 31A. Dawn Carmody from the 31A office is already one of our breakout presenters. She's going to be running like a double session. So that we'll be able to do that. And Megan, I also have some information about 31A today that I'll be able to share. All right. So I see 31A and the dyslexia law. Those are both definitely topics of interest, and we're going to talk about both of those today a little bit too. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the federal stuff. Any other breakout ideas or anything like that, please continue to drop those in the chat. All right, so as we likely know, last night the consolidated application amendment has been released. So the final program allocations have been out for about a week or so. And the amendment is now open. So I do have the amendment memo linked in here. I think this might be the longest memo that I've ever seen released by MDE. So it's a full 8 pages. And there's an awful lot of information in it. If you have not already done so, I highly recommend reading through the whole thing, maybe even printing it and writing notes on it and highlighting, etc. There's a lot of information in it. Um, yeah, this is a doozy of a memo. Make sure you take a look at it really closely and read it really closely. Um, I did put in a couple of items that I thought were of will be of interest to everybody. So we know the due date from as indicated in the memo is February 27th. But the first thing that you need to do when you log into the consolidated app is go to the review grant selection screen and click save. So that is going to bring in all the new funds. If you skip that step, everything else is going to be a mess and you'll end up redoing the whole thing. So um, make sure you click save on the review grant selection screen. Another item that I thought is going to be really, really important that everybody needs to know after reading through several sources is don't open up any just random budget items. If you open it, you must put something in it, even if you accidentally opened it up. And so if anything that you opened must have one of these three things in it. Let's say you open it up and you're like, oh, I have this new item. I've gotten prior approval on this, or I'm going to amend it at this time. Oh, yada, yada, whatever. You have a new item that you're going to put in there. Then make sure that you put in all caps new in front of that item and then put in whatever that item is. You also might be amending some items. So anything that you amend, open up that budget item, type amend first before you do anything else, type amend in front of it, and then amend whatever it is, the amount or the amount of people or whatever the item is. If you accidentally open it and you're like, oh, this wasn't the right one, put in no change. So that will let them know that you opened it, but you didn't actually make a change to it. So just the main takeaway here, don't open anything on the budgets that you don't need to open. And if you do open it, no matter what the circumstance is, you have to put something in front of whatever that budget item is, new, amend, or no change. um, and as always, you have to budget every cent. You have to budget everything out, including all the carryover. So nothing will get approved without that. So those were some of the things that I picked out that were like, okay, everybody needs to know this, and we need to get them in there. But last night, Shelly Patton, who is our consultant for over here on the west side of the state, um, sent out a pretty lengthy, well, I guess it's just 2 pages, but a very dense item or with many items in it. And so I have this linked in here, and I recommend that everybody take a look at this. Your consultant may have sent out something similar, but I thought there was a lot of good information in here. So you'll see things in here. It's like contact me or or those sorts of things. That's all Shelly. So you can just kind of substitute that with contact your consultant. So anyway, I just wanted to give out a couple of guidance documents or a little information about that. There was an amendment, excuse me, an amendment webinar recently. It was held, I think it was last week. They held a few across the state. I did put in the slide deck and the webinar recording of that. This will be especially important for everybody that does stuff for private schools. I would say like 80% of the entire webinar was about how to handle private school situation and amendments. So, and we have more information than that in my next agenda item here. So those are the resources that I have for that. If there's anybody that has any other information or resources, please don't hesitate to drop those in chat or unmute, and we can talk some more about that.
David, I'm putting in the chat, our ISD is doing our regional meeting on Monday, and our Region 5 consultant will be presenting on the consolidated app and any changes. And that's 3 hours from 9 to 12, but the registration is free. And again, it's virtual. So I'm going to put that in the chat.
Awesome. Yeah, so if anybody over in Stacy's land can attend that then, right, Stacy?
Yeah, actually, anyone in the state, they don't really check. So
It's a virtual
it's an
meeting,
ISD meeting.
virtual meeting.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome. I will link that here in the agenda as a resource. All right, just getting that. And I'm gonna pop that in right here. Awesome. What's the date? Monday? Sorry, can't, my brain's not working that far ahead.
The 26th?
Okay, awesome. So if anybody's feeling like they need some extra support, that is a great resource. Thanks for that, Stacy. Okay, so I want to talk just a little bit more about the private school requirements. If anybody is here from Muskegon ISD or Ottawa ISD that are in our private school consortium, I just want to remind you that I sent out a communication with specific directions for our consortium. It's a little bit different than the normal communication that everybody else is going to use. So if you're here from our consortium in Muskegon or Ottawa counties, just make sure that you got that communication that I sent out. If you did not get that, let me know and I can resend that. So the private school compliance, if you remember that, got added a few years ago. And it was previously in GEMS. So it was still ran on the same timeline as the consolidated amendment, but it was not in Nexus, it was in GEMS. Well, it is now in Nexus. So there are two new screens and they're in the program information section. So let's take a look at what those look like. So um, this is the program information section on the navigation bar on the left side of the screen. And so you know, as previously it had equitable access and the language assistance program attachments. So now it has these additional ones, private school participation letters and private school consultation documents. So the private school participation letters looks like this screen. And so it has a couple of things here. So what you need to put in here is your in-district, a sample in-district letter and a sample out-of-district letter. They do not need to have any, you don't need to upload all of letters that you sent or those sorts of things. You just really need to say, this is when I send an in-district letter, this is what it looks like. When I send an out-of-district letter, this is what it looks like. It's one of those things where you're going to say sample in-district letter, then you browse and attach it. And then you'll do a second upload, sample out-of-district letter, browse and attach it. So yeah, so that is the first screen, pretty straightforward. And then the next screen is your consultation documents. And this is where you have to upload all of them. So if you consulted with 3 schools, you're going to have 3 uploads. So you'll say something like, private school A, and then you'll upload the consultation document. Private school B, upload it. Private school C, upload it. So if you consult with 10, you're going to need to upload 10. If you don't consult with anybody, so none of the private schools took you up on that, then you will upload nothing here. It'll be blank. You do not need to upload something that says, I didn't participate with a private school this year. Like you don't have to upload anything. If you didn't consult, you just don't upload anything. So I asked specifically about that. I asked at our last MAS FPS meeting, there's no checkbox that says I didn't consult with anybody. There's no assurances on here like there have been in the past. It's just basically that's what you upload, or in this case, you don't upload. So again, if you're in our consortium here in Muskegon or Ottawa counties, make sure you check my communication I sent. It has specific directions for you in it. The last thing that I'll say about the private schools for right now is this has been at every possible way it can be communicated. So for some reason, this is extremely important to everybody that handwritten signatures have to be on the consultation documents. So handwritten signature from your district's authorized official, but also the private school's official. So if you don't have those, you're gonna want to go and find them because your whole consolidated application might be held up if you don't have those on there. So that is what I know about the private school requirements. Um, and that's pretty much all that I have for right now on the consolidate application. I see that Carol Ann put in some additional, an additional everyone's invited opportunity. So I'm going to add that as well. Um, what time is that? Is that Carol Ann? 9 o'clock. Okay. Got this in here on the 26th at 9 o'clock. Well, that looks like a pretty stacked agenda too. We have a couple of good meetings there. Oh, this is the still? Oh, that was just more information on the last one. Sorry, I'm a little slow today. That was more information. Got it. Okay, I'm just gonna say more info. Region 5 meeting. Thanks a lot, Will. All right. Gonna go ahead and drop this in one more time. Had a couple people ask for it. Okay. All right. So yes, so that's everything that I know about the Con App, and we have that really great other opportunity for from Region 5 that's free to everybody. All right. Dina asks, um, quick questions for the private consultation forms. We have our original, but we haven't been able to have our amendment meetings as we didn't have final allocations, which is a topic for our amendment meeting. Is just the one meeting in the fall acceptable? Or are they expecting a completed document, including amendment? They are 100% expecting that you had two meetings. You had your meeting when before we submitted our initial consolidated app, and they are expecting that you're going to consult again here at amendment time. So you will definitely need to meet again. And the purpose for that is, the dollar amounts have changed. Now we have our carryover. Now we have our final amendment amounts. And we are supposed to, again, consult to say, oh, the amounts have changed. Is our plan still good? Here's the new amount that you're getting. Is there anything additional we're supposed to do? So you're going to need to have both of the signature and initial pieces on there. Okay, a couple other federal updates. Um, we've talked about comparability at our last meeting, and I've been communicating about this in my monthly communication. But as we know, at least in recent years, there's been a comparability item in the Consolidated App Amendment. And so that is not in Nexus this year. I think that this was due to the federal funding issues and things like that. We were not required by MDE or I should say, MDE was not going to monitor us. MDE is only required to monitor comparability every other year. But we are supposed to monitor it every year, even if it's not something that's reported to MDE. And so I think we talked at the last meeting about how, there's a spreadsheet that you can use and those sorts of things. I worked with a couple of districts on the spreadsheet, and that thing is a disaster. It is a huge amount of work to use that spreadsheet. I am encouraging everybody to follow the law and make sure that you're checking for comparability. If you do have to, and not all districts have to check for comparability, we're talking about districts that have overlapping grade levels. If you don't have overlapping grade levels, there's nothing to look for comparability. But if you are required to do comparability, I really recommend using this federal guidance document. And if you go to page 19 of that document, it gives you several examples of how you can check for comparability based on several different configurations of how you might have your district set up. And then after they show the example, they actually go in and they talk about details about like like how you could do that or under what circumstances. So they have like 11 pages of examples that you could use. And I recommend finding the one that fits the best for your scenario and using that instead of trying to use the spreadsheet that's released by MDE. After this, then it goes into details about like how could you do it and under what circumstances would you have to do it. And so this is actually a really, really nice document if you have to do comparability. I really recommend taking a look at this and doing it this way. When it's in Nexus, it's really not that big a deal because it pulls in a bunch of numbers for you. Um, Not having it in Nexus this year is I think it's a big burden on districts to ask them to still maintain the comparability and then not give us the tools to do so. But at least we have this federal guidance um, and then we can just, like I said, just pick the example that works best for you in your scenario. There's lots and lots of examples for that. I do have the memo linked in here. There's the comparability website, comparability facts. So you can, a lot of stuff here to do this. Again, there's nothing to submit about comparability, but it could be asked for if we are in an on-site review, if you get some sort of federal audit, if you are subject to single point audits around some of your federal funds. So there might be a variety of cases that somebody would ask you for your documentation that you're comparable, and so you don't want to be caught not having it. So that's all I have to say about comparability. All right, so we'll move on. Last item that I have is a federal update, and I'm going to pause to see if anybody has anything additional or if there's any further questions. Is Title I supplement not supplant methodology. We had heard earlier in the year that we were going to have to upload our methodology into the consolidated application at amendment time. That is not the case. So there is no place to upload it. You do not have to upload it. You don't have to put that into additional budget detail. But much like the comparability piece, you are supposed to have a methodology for determining supplement, not supplant at the building level for Title I. You're supposed to have that, and you need to be able to prove that it was followed. So some sort of supporting documentation that you actually followed that methodology. So again, I think that there were plans to give out more guidance and information on that this year, and that didn't happen. So in the meantime, we're supposed to have something. I did put in a sample methodology. This was developed here in Muskegon County when the whole idea about the supplement not supplant methodology came out with I think it was during the ESEA reauthorization. And so we did develop this. I did run this past OES and the fiscal unit, and they both said, that looks fine. So I'm not really sure that anybody really knows what it's supposed to look like. So this passed the sniff test. I personally have never heard of anybody being asked, like getting audited and having them look over their methodology and being audited on their methodology. I don't know if any of you have, but it's something that we need to have. And so this is one example of what that could look like. All right, I am going to pause there and just see if there are, knowing that we're going to be moving into the state stuff next, from the federal perspective, any questions, any further information that's out there that anybody would like to share, information or resources. So I just want to pause to see if there's anything you can unmute, or you can drop anything in chat. Not seeing anybody rush into that unmute button. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the state section. In the meantime, if anything does come to mind, just to go ahead and drop that in the chat and we can pause and figure it out. Okay, wanted to talk a little bit about 31A. At our last meeting, it was kind of happening at the same time as the Special Populations Conference. And somebody was actually at the Special Populations Conference, and I can't remember if it was at the meeting or right after the meeting. They shared the presentation that happened. And so I wanted to make sure that that presentation was linked up. Um, Definitely some good information in here and information about some of the changes. We're not going to go over all of it. I do want to talk about a couple of specific items that have changed for this year. But if you have not seen the legislative update for that, this is always a for sure breakout that I go to when I'm at the Special Pops conference. There's always changes to 31A. It's always getting tweaks around the edges. And it seems like there's always new ways that we can use the funds. And so we're going to talk about some of those today. But before we do, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that I have a few holes in my knowledge right this minute. And so I was going to see if there's anybody here that has some additional information around these two items. One of them is the expanded use of funds. So there was more about the recruitment and retention, and there was the one about small class size reduction. And at the beginning of the year, districts had the opportunity to say that yes, they were interested in using their funds this way. And I just haven't heard anything else about that. And so I'm at the ISD level, so I don't get some of the communications that go to LEAs. I'm just wondering, what came of that? Did they get with the people that said yes and try to get more information? Did they say you're approved? When we said yes, can we just start using it that way? I just don't know any more information about that. I'm wondering if anybody else has additional information. I did reach out to the 31A office earlier this week, but I hadn't heard back before this meeting. Expanded use of funds. Anybody else have additional information on that? Okay, Shannon says that they got a message that they were approved to use it for class size reduction, but it was very vague. Okay, so if it sounds like from Shannon's experience, if we said yes to those items, you probably got some sort of follow-up communication saying, go for it.
David, we did do it for class size reduction
Okay.
and it was approved.
Okay, so Dean is saying they had to complete a template and some additional documentation, or was that like the original thing, Dina, that was submitted?
I'll just take myself off instead of typing it in.
Thanks.
So we had to do the intent, which was the original report template.
Yep.
And then we had to provide like some written narratives. And then there was data. I'm relooking at that to refresh my memory. So that is what we completed and submitted. And then we waited for approval for that, which allowed us to use the funds.
Yeah.
So nothing yet, but we're anticipating there'll be something possibly down the road, some sort of report that's associated with it. That's my guess. It's my assumption. I don't know that for a fact.
Okay. Becky, I see said, yes, we are approved also and wanting for I'm sorry, can you maybe unmute and say what you were talking about there?
Oh, absolutely. So we completed the intent because of the dyslexia information and just kind of planning those two things at the same time. We're unsure if we're going to use those funds for that or if we're going to need to allocate those towards something dyslexia before the end of the year. So it should have said waiting for like the district to determine what we want to do. We just didn't want to miss the chance to be able to do it if it was something we wanted to do.
Right. Yeah. And I think it was pretty clear in the intent to use process that like, just because you said yes doesn't mean you have to spend it that way, right? Okay. So it sounds like there hasn't been a lot of information more forthcoming on it, but it sounds like that if we said yes to those things, people got some additional communication saying, we heard you say yes. So, okay. The other thing that I had a question about is there's some, and it's in the presentation, there's some additional reporting that needs to be completed this year, or communications. And I haven't seen anything additional about that. Hold on, I want to find that slide now. And I'm wondering if anybody else has more info. Hold on. Okay. So it's section 17 of 31A. New district level 31A report for parents and caregivers. The report must include fiscal and program implementation, transparency, and parent input and engagement. And then there's like all these items that go under it. I feel really bad, but I don't know anything else about this. Like, is there, again, I did reach out to the 31A office. I haven't heard back yet. Does anybody have any more information about this?
Hi, I was a little late to join, but I'm from Alpena, and we found out at our AMA or our ISD level that there is going to be a template by building that we'll need to complete. I believe it'll be due September 30th, is what we're hearing.
Okay.
But the template has not been released yet that we know.
Okay. So thank you. I'm glad that at least we know that there's something and with a possible due date on it. Dina, was there is there more information about the template on the 31A website?
I sent the link for the website, and they
Yep.
do have a copy of the template, and there's an FAQ on there as well.
About the report specifically?
About the report template and just answering questions.
Hey. Oh, that's the intent to use.
That's the intent to use. So there's nothing else specific about the report necessarily.
Oh, okay, okay.
So that must have been something that I had verbally been told was a possibility in my question asking process.
Okay. Okay. So sorry, for a minute there I got excited. I thought it was the report for
No.
section 17. Okay.
It
Yeah,
just has the
so
template on there, which is what Cassandra was asking about.
oh, sorry, that was a side conversation in the chat. Sorry. I was going off of my conversation about the section 17 report. Got it. Okay, so yeah, it sounds like there's no additional information about this subsection 17 report. But based on the meeting that was had up in Alpena, we know there's going to be some sort of template that's released, and it sounds like it's going to be due by the end of the whole 31A cycle, which is September 30th. Has anybody heard anything different or have any additional information on that? Okay. Well, maybe I'm not as out of the loop as I thought on that one. I'm just going to make a quick note in here. All right. Well, when I hear back from the 31A team, because I know I will hear back from them about these two questions, I'm going to come back into the document and I'm going to add in whatever information that they have. What I usually do is I'll highlight, I'll put in red that this was information that came post meeting. So I will add that here if I get any additional information. And then I'll also be sure to include that in my February communication, which will come out in a couple of weeks. Thanks for the additional info and resources on both of those. So I'm just going to pop this open. This is just a spreadsheet that I keep that I try to keep track of all of the allowable uses for 31A, and this mirrors the annual program fiscal report screens. And I highlighted anything that's new that changed or is getting removed for the annual program fiscal report this year. So I had a meeting with Dawn Carmody from the 31A office in November. And so this was the result of that meeting. And so she and I made this together. So I wanted to just go over the changes. So in the intervention supports during the day section, They're changing the wording of English learners during the day. They're changing that to supplemental English learners during the day. So they're really wanted to hammer home that these are supposed to be supplemental funds. And when we fill out our language assistance program, it says at the top, how are you serving or teaching your students how to speak English from general funds? So this is just a reminder, I guess, or reiterating that 31A are supplemental funds. They're not there to meet the federal requirements to teach students how to speak English from general funds. So that's the only change in the intervention supports during the day. There is a new section that's going to be added because there's new availability to use these funds for transporting homeless students. And so we are now able to use 31A to transport to the school of origin, and that's only any excess costs that might be accrued because of having to transport homeless students to the school of origin. So there will be, you might want to work with your transportation department to figure out what effect this might have. But that is a new way that we can use the funding. And so it's a whole new section, students experiencing homelessness. There's only one item in that section, transportation to school of origin excess costs. So that's brand new. Down under intervention supports, the extended school day and year. One change is to that English learners. Again, they just want to say that that's supplemental. And a new way that we can use 31A is that we can use 31A for transportation for those extended day or extended year opportunities for the students. So 2 new ways that you can actually use 31A for transportation. We used to have direct instructional supports. They are going to change that header to instructional supports / MTSS. The only change in this section is previously it was certified behavior interventionist. And that is extraordinarily narrow about what that means. And they are going to change that to behavioral interventionist specialist. So that's different than the paraprofessional staff behavioral. So this would be more of your certified staff that are in some sort of behavior interventionist or behavior specialist position. Then we get down to, they kind of changed some of the names of some of the items. So there's going to be a part A and a part B on the non-instructional supports section. So part A are these items. There's no new changes. They just change the category. And then part B, there are a couple of changes. They call it other supports now. And so security is changed to school security personnel. And Jill, I think that means that yes to your question. But if anybody knows different, Jill asked, can you use 31A to pay for any district's portion for a school resource officer? I think the answer is yes to that, but want to see if anybody knows otherwise. If so, then you would probably put the funding here under this security. It's going to be school security personnel.
Sorry to interrupt, but I did have a conversation with our consultant about SROs.
Yeah.
And essentially the job description has to be very specific and falling under that, the 31A type responsibilities.
Got it.
So a general SRO that's they're monitoring, they're this and that. They said no, but maybe it's changed. They want you to be able to document that they're working with groups of kids and different things like that fall under 31A.
Yeah. So basically, and I think thanks for that, Stephanie. I think that that was a much better answer than the one that I had. I think that anytime that you ask anything of the 31A office, they will say it really, whatever that expense is, has to meet the intent and purpose. It has to be reasonable and necessary, right? We hear those things all the time. And so if you are planning to or thinking about, like Jill says, they were funding it out 31AA, they're thinking about using 31A. then it'd probably be a good idea just to work with your consultant to say, how can we do this in a way that meets the intent and purpose of the of 31A? And just like Angie said, that you're probably going to hear yes, and there needs to be some sort of documentation and things like that. So yeah, so that's that for the security piece. So school security personnel they're changing security to school security personnel. So I think this was because I think people are using it to buy like cameras and I don't know, install parking meters, I don't know, stuff like that. And so they want to know that it's specific to personnel, and obviously meeting the intent and purpose. And then the other item on here is we are now able to pay for our homeless liaison out of 31A. And I think I'm going to offer the same caveat to that as to the SRO. If you are planning to do that, I think it'd be a great opportunity to reach out to your 31A consultant and give them the job description and get their input on reasonable, necessary, allocable, all that kind of stuff. So there have been a few things that were removed. So they removed dental screenings and school nurse. If you are paying for a school nurse out of 31A, I talked to Dawn about this, and she said that likely you probably could still do that, and it just might fall under school health clinic. So what other information does anybody have about this? You might have been in contact with with 31A office, or you might have seen these changes, and there's some things that you're talking about doing in your district. Anything that anybody would like to add, or any other questions about some of these changes? A couple of items came up. Simeon and Jill both mentioned about free and reduced lunch percentages. I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think I remember that 50% item has been removed. Am I correct on that? Where you could only use security if it was 50% or more? I might. Okay, Kim's saying yes to that. Yep. Yeah, so that percentage item was dropped as well. Yeah. I think there's an item about that in the update, but I'm pretty sure about that. And it sounds like some other people are thinking the same thing. Okay. So the last thing, I just put a couple of additional things in here for 31A from our last meeting. There was questions about the opportunity index bands. There was question about free and reduced lunch forms and how does that work with community eligibility or free meals for all that kind of stuff. So I just included all of the information that we discussed at our last meeting. So the long story short on that is we really need to make sure that we're still getting all of our benefit forms and those sorts of things. It's very impactful for your 31A funding. Especially with this change to opportunity index bands. And so all the information that we talked about from that is at our last meeting, and that's in our last video. Let's see here. Stephanie put in chat, I've been told that the templates will require a needs assessment by building, but I haven't heard how they will be shown, if that makes sense. Is that back to our question about the district level report?
That's to the question about the restrictions based on free and reduced lunch
Oh,
numbers.
okay.
I would assume that we'll have to show our need by similar to Title I funds. It's kind of, that's what, she didn't come out and say that, but I kind of felt like maybe it's going to be similar to Title I distribution.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this year is kind of since we don't have the report yet and we're halfway through the year and we've been spending the funds the entire year, I'm hoping that we'll get some grace on all of that this year. So again, as soon as I hear back more information from the 31A team, I'll get that in here. I was really hoping that I would have heard back in time, but I didn't really give them a lot of lead time on my question either. So, well, that's about all that I have for 31A as of right now. I do believe I'm going to have some additional things to add. I will add them in the agenda. I will also add them to my my next monthly communication, which will go out here in a couple of weeks. So Carol Ann just got a message, so about Title III. So I'm just going to read this to everybody, and then I'll paste it up in the federal section. Just had a message come through about Title III. If you receive Title III EL, please note that the new allocations have not yet been loaded into Nexus due to an accounting error. I do not have a date when this will be fixed. If you receive Title III EL, you can work through the rest of the amendment, but please wait to submit. So that is great info. So as of 10:02 on January 21st, info on Title III as of 21 may be fixed. I'm going to put that. Okay. All right. So got that added there. All right. We are going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the state stuff. Some of these are just more reminders. This one's kind of falls more into the reminder category. We've had to do the AER for years and years and years now, and it is now ready. So it is due to be posted by February 20th. If you are new to this or need reminders about how to do it, I have all of the information about how to do that, how to get the reports from the My School Data webpage, what the templates look like for uploading, all that kind of stuff. So it is publicly facing now, and so it is time to get those posted to your transparency link on your website, and that is due February 20th. So hopefully these resources will help if you have not had to work on that before. Also kind of more in the reminder category is 104H. The benchmark assessment reimbursement. So that application is now open also. That one has a due date that's coming up pretty soon. And so the memo about that is here. I have all the FAQs listed, and there's also a guide about how to accomplish that in Nexus. Michelle said, I was not able to get the AER info printed large enough and still on one page to read it. Michelle, could you unmute and tell a little bit more about that?
Hi, yes, so I went to the site, I downloaded, tried to print it out so it would fit, on the width of one page
Yeah.
landscape, and I had to shrink it down so small that I can't read it. And of course, parents won't be able to read it. So I wasn't sure, like, it didn't print out this year how it has in previous years, so I didn't know if I was doing something wrong.
So when you came to this page on the My School Data page, right?
Mm,
And
yep.
you hit the generate report.
Yeah,
Was it all of them were bad or one specific one?
all of them were the same. Yeah,
Oh, Amber just put in some more information.
okay.
All right. Yep, Amber and Tammy both dropped in. Okay, so we're exploring
Okay.
future options. A preferred compliance method for schools is to share their AER, is to use the link generated from the share button and paste the link at the appropriate entry. So you don't need to actually put the report in, you just need to put the link. So after you generate the report, there's a thing that says generate link. And they're
Okay.
saying just put the link in instead of actually trying to paste the actual report itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So Amber said the share the link is up at the very top right.
I don't think you need to generate these reports. I think like where you are right now, if you scroll up, there's a share button next to feedback.
Yeah.
That's where you generate the link. I think that's all that you need. But once you go in and you search for your district,
Yeah.
then there's the share button. I don't think you have to go through each. It's all like on a dashboard when you find your school district.
Okay. Sorry, I haven't done this in a few years. So like I mentioned at the beginning, like this is requires the village item. So but you do generate you generate the reports, right? And then you hit the share.
Nope, if you give me 1 minute, I can, we just went over this at our ad staff. I think you go to, let me find it here. Go to K-12 grade,
Yeah,
the tab at the top in the middle,
yeah.
and then school accountability, and then school index. And then you're going to search for your school or your district,
Yeah, that's
and
that's
then
not
you
the
click
AER
share.
though. That's
What's
the
that?
school index. That's the school index. That's not the AER.
That's the directions they gave to put on the report for AER.
Okay. Interesting.
Hmm.
I'll email what I found.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
okay. So that's really different. All right.
If you
Yeah,
click if you click on that blue button right there,
Yep.
if you click on that, it's going to go into the dashboard there. And then at the top, you should be able to go to your ISD, your district, your
Yep.
school. And then at the top is the share button, and that has all 5 reports there for
Yeah.
each of the buildings. And that's the link you use for
Yes.
each of your buildings, and then your district report obviously is just
Okay. That jives with my understanding of the AER. Like the
Mhm.
mixing of the school index and the AER, that doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, so you have to you do all of this first, and then when it's all displayed, then you hit the share button, and that's what you link in. Is that correct?
Yes, it'll give you a bit.ly link, and each
Yep.
bit.ly link is different for each building that you
Yep.
have.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
what I understood too, as well, Dave, from Cindy T from Wayne Risa. She sent us some directions for that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's so that thing, Stephanie, that says visit the AER on my school data, that's where we are right now. But where they say it's K-12 grade school accountability school index, that is not the AER, that's the school index. They're two totally different things. So I don't.
I was thinking within the letter, this is the link that they have to include. That's what I was.
Okay.
But it's the template. I think we're definitely talking about 2 different things.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I don't know if this portion of our meeting was helpful or extraordinarily confusing to everybody. But I think that this is, in regard to the AER, this is definitely the right thing to do. And so it's good to know from the communication that has been received from MDE-OEAA. We're not expected to put the PDFs of these reports in, like they're not going to fit. We are expected to generate the link and then put the links in. So hopefully, and that is all accomplished at this very first link here. So hopefully that will get everybody pointed in the right direction.
David, we do have some community members who like to look at a hard copy. So
Yeah.
that's why we always have one at each building
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's so tiny.
Yeah.
Even with my bifocals, I can't read it.
You'll have to paste it onto what's that, ledger size paper. Let's see, I think I might have this presentation in there. Yeah, this presentation is linked here. I have that linked in our have this presentation that was already linked in here. Okay, so that's the AER. Feel free to drop any additional resources in there. I think we talked about 104H. I don't think that there were any questions about that. Again, it's just the reimbursement if you're using one of those approved MD assessments. Okay, so getting into, before I get into the dyslexia law and 164K, I just really wanted to point out that since this was an identification year for CSI schools, there's been a lot of new information. There's some new resources and some new processes that are required for schools that are identified as CSI. All of those districts have probably been communicated about what those requirements are. I just wanted to have them pasted here. I've been to all of the webinars and in-person meetings and all those sorts of things. And so I have, if that is needed for anybody, I just want to let everybody know that I have all those resources here. If you've been identified for CSI, you've probably been involved in a lot of those. So just wanted to put those here just in case anybody had missed any of those. That was kind of just more of a little update section. So, but I do want to dig into and just have some opportunity to share some resources around the dyslexia law and then also this 164K. So dyslexia law, the items that I have here, and I am by no means a good resource on this stuff. I've been just trying to curate information on it. I have not been like steeped in all of the things around it, like maybe some of you from MAISA or those sorts of things. I just put out some of the things that I've seen that I thought have been helpful. So we have a memo that came out fairly recently from MDE. We have this resource, the Unpacking the K-12 Literacy Law, that I think has, I like it because it has the actual statutory language in it, and then there are additional resources or information that go along with it. I'm a big fan of reading the statutory language or having resources connected to the statutory language. So you can see this is broken up into the kind of the four main sections here. So I think this is a really great resource. I'm not 100% sure on the source of this. I don't know if it was an ISD that put it together, if it was something from MAISA or elsewhere. If anybody knows, I'd be glad to attribute it to the right organization. But I thought that this one was really nice. I just like the way that it's laid out. I like that it has the statutory language in it, and I like that it has resources attached to the statutory language. And then Kent ISD also has a support document that I think is really nice. And again, is broken out in a lot of resources and things like that. I think there are a lot of things that are not known. And so I think that this statement here at the top of Kent's paper is super important. I said, this is Kent ISD's interpretation of the legislation and it's subject to change. So right now we have the legislation. And so a lot of the things that are out there are like, here's what the legislation says. Here's what it might mean. Here are some existing resources around this. But until official communication comes out about a lot of these items, a lot of this is speculation or interpretation. So I think those are just some important things to keep in mind. A lot of this stuff goes into place in the 27-28 school year. There is a web page that has all the information about the dyslexia law, including it has like, as we know, there's lists of approved assessments, lists of approved vendors, lists of approved ELA curricula and stuff like that. So all of that stuff is here. For example, here's that evidence-based class-wide elementary reading curricula. These are the approved ones. But in March, they are opening that up for another round of approvals. So if you were like, I can't believe that X, Y, or Z isn't on this list, well, they might make it on in this next round. So anyway, just again, I wanted to just kind of put out the resources that we have, and just my interpretation of things as of right now is there's a lot of thinking about it. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of interpreting. There's a lot of reading legislation. And there are some things that are known, but there's a lot that it remains unknown. So Michelle, did that address your question that you had here? That in March, they're reopening the...
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So I just wanted to, I guess at this point, see, does anybody else have a really great resource that they've been referencing on this and trying to keep up to date on it? Anything else that anybody would like to share about this? Anybody that feels like they've really been at the center of this work and would like to provide any additional information that they think is important for everybody else to know? think Will's comment here is important to call out. So about if you are using a curricular resource that is not on the approved list, he says to talk to the vendor, ask them if they applied, ask why they were denied, because they all got letters about that, and then see if they are creating language for notification if they're denied. So as we know, part of the legislation is if you don't go with one of those approved resources, we're supposed to make a public statement on our web pages about, I mean, I think it's supposed to say that this is not following the science of reading. Even if it is, it's just not on the approved list. And so hopefully the vendors will help us with the language that we can use for that. I'm not seeing anybody rush to the unmute button on this one, so I'm guessing that there's a lot of, just like I said, reading over the resources, reading over the legislation, and trying to be ready for when more information comes out. I did want to also, oh, I saw Melissa unmuted.
You know what, I don't know if it's helpful, but we applied for the 35M grant, and we were working on trying to see if arts and letters would be approved. It's the same company that uses Wit and Wisdom, and we were working with the vendor, and they told us that they did apply to be on the approved list. And so we waited until January, and then I reached out to MDE, and I think there's some confusion because I said, you know, I explained that we were hoping to get arts and letters instead of Wit and Wisdom. If you're not familiar with it, Wit and Wisdom is a curriculum that uses, you know, everything for literacy, but it's very long in the delivery, and the arts and letters was a little bit shorter. They kind of compacted it using some of the same titles. And when I reached out, I was told by Kelly Flaminio that unfortunately arts and letters was not submitted for review for section 35M. They had applied for a different funding. So I think there's even some confusion with the vendors in my experience. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone else is facing that same problem, but I think there's a lot of things being talked about with dyslexia, and I think a lot of people are just grouping them together.
Melissa,
I can't imagine why the vendors would have been confused.
I know.
Everything's so clear. Sorry,
Melissa.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to add on to that because I actually happened to be meeting with the Great Minds rep last week, and I asked that question, and the rep had told me that they did recently resubmit, but they had to wait. They couldn't submit for 35M, but they did submit for the dyslexia law approved list, and it all came down to they hadn't yet met the requirement of being able to provide evidence of success. And it was because it was so new. So they said they had to wait for a time period so that they had enough data collected for implementation before they were even eligible to submit.
Okay, that makes sense for that.
I have some similar concerns at Columbia School District. We just completed a curriculum review of our literacy program, and we utilized Wonders as the comprehensive side of the reading rope. And so we're expecting to use 35M money to purchase a phonics program. But that goes into, how is the state planning on monitoring this ELA curriculum? Do you have to use all facets of it? You know, reading is very complex, and so there's different elements to an ELA curriculum, and there's no such thing as a comprehensive curriculum. So I'm just curious, in terms of the legislation stating that we have to notify parents that we're not using, you know, an approved curriculum. What if we're only using an approved curriculum for one side of ELA and a non-approved curriculum for the other side of ELA? That makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, awful lot of unknowns and speculation and I heards, and this is the person that I talked to kind of stuff going on with this. Stephanie, can you tell us about the no 35M police item?
Yeah, so we were at my big question has been no one will give me an answer because we use UFly tier 2, tier 3, and now we chose that as our tier 1 with Benchmark Advance, which did not create, didn't make the list, at least at this point. And we were at the MyKIP Roadshow at Genesee ISD on Thursday, and I was talking to one of the presenters and said, no one has been able to answer this question for us. And when they start attaching a 5% reduction, that's concerning. And he said, well, there's no MyKIP police. So the only way that you would ever have a 5% reduction is if you didn't notify, if you used a curriculum that wasn't on the list, you didn't notify parent, that parent decided to report you, but then they had to show evidence that you didn't, which was really weird, but show evidence that you didn't post that you weren't using it, then they would start looking at it. But he said there's no 35M police to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Just make sure that you have invoices to show what you've spent it on. So it was really vague, but there's no there's no one to watch it.
Let's see if I can summarize this portion of our agenda. There's a lot of things that are unknown, and there are a lot of questions about even things that are published. And in the meantime, have a look at the legislation and be ready to act when needed. I don't even know if that's a good summary. Brooke indicated that there is going to be another dyslexia summit on March 20th. They put out, it's from MyMTSS. They did put out a save the date, but there is no registration, but that's on March 20th. So I'm just going to add that information. Hopefully that one, I did go to the last one, and it was heavy on theory and light on details and information. So hopefully they will update that with, hopefully they'll have some more solid answers for us at that. Let's see, Amber put in here, I believe the document you have linked with literacy and dyslexia comes from Oakland schools. They're putting out lots of information. So they have a SMORE that might be a good thing to subscribe to if this is of interest for you. And focuses on coaching requirements under the law. And then the MAISA resource on law. Okay, so we're thinking that probably came from Oakland schools. I'm going to put question mark. Thank you for that, Amber, and thank you for those additional resources. So if those are of interest, I would definitely recommend checking those out. All right, 164K. We're going to end on a real high note. So let's take a look at the statutory language. In the vein of do what we say or we're going to take away your money, the section 164K was added this year to the School Aid Act. And so this is about withholding 5% if there are any violations. So I'm going to focus on these two. I think the other one's about breakfast. The other one's about child nutrition, pupil membership. But I wanted to focus on these two because they're more instructional. So this is related to our last conversation, and we just talked all about that. So that is about the curriculum not being evidence-based, and I think there were several questions that were brought up about that. What if part of it is, and we're also using other resources, things like that. But in addition to what we've already talked about is Part D of this section. District or intermediate school shall ensure that student survey questions and results are made available to the public posted on the district's intermediate website, and that the parents and legal guardians are notified of the survey. As using subject, survey includes a survey from the district, intermediate district, or local, state, or federal government. So I have some more resources about this because, I mean, we all give tons and tons of surveys, right? And so I wanted to share some legal opinion on this, because I think this is, it's scary at first, but doesn't seem quite as scary after I read some of the information. So I have two pieces here. Thanks for Amber for sharing these, of a summary and connections from Miller Johnson attorneys, and then also from Clark Hill. And then there's a guidance document from Miller Johnson. So I'm not going to go into those, but I just really recommend reading them. They're all very short. They're probably about 1 page. And so I really recommend reading them. But the main things that they point out are, these are student surveys that are given at the district or ISD level, or from the federal government or state government. And so that means if we are surveying our staff, that does not need to be reported. If a classroom is conducting a survey, that does not need to get reported. If students are conducting a survey, that does not need to get reported, right? So this is district level surveys that are given to students. So the first one that comes to my mind would be like the school climate survey, right? But I think that what they're really concerned about is like the health surveys, right? I think that's probably where this came from. So, you know, sometimes those are conducted by the ISDs, sometimes they're conducted by districts. And so those are the ones that are going to have to get publicly reported. Yeah, so, but as far as like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to put like all these surveys up there. You don't have to put things up if it's, right, homecoming court, right? Probably don't need to put that survey up. It's, I think they even use that as a specific example, Michelle, because that'd be like a student organization. The students are, you know, are doing that or whatever. So I think that it's not quite as scary as it sounds, but definitely will be something to pay attention to. So just have those resources there for you to take a look at. All right, that took us all the way up to 10:30. We had a lot in here today. There was a lot of sharing that people had. I really appreciate everybody that asked questions or unmuted or provided additional resources and information. Thank you for all of that. I am able to stay on for a little bit longer. So I'm going to stop the video, but if there's anybody, I'll say we can hold a pseudo roundtable if anybody would like to stick around for any specific questions anybody has. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then if anybody has any specific questions, anybody is welcome to stick around, whether you want to hear those questions or ask your own or participate in helping to answer those. And I will, I'm sure, need help with answering.